Oh, welcome to the Iowa Blog. We're back in our ocean studio. That means we're going to be continuing our series on coming home and the Messiah, which is the second volume of what will soon be 4 volumes and hopefully 5 before very long of the Coming Home series. This, of course, is Wookiee. And we are about to go back into Hosea, which is one of the more revealing prophetic texts for the history of God's relationship with Israel, as well as where God and the Jewish people stand today. In this book, we are acquainted with the reality that God asked Hosea to do something that would normally seem exceedingly odd. All the time, God is saying, I don't want you to be religious. Religion is terrible. Don't engage in the practices of the Goyim who have integrated religion and politics into their lives. Don't do that. And yet, one of the first things he tells Hosea is, I want you to go marry a temple prostitute. Now, the reason for that is something that is profoundly important if you want to understand who God chooses to communicate through and why, and then how. He wanted Hosea to marry a temple prostitute so that he would know what it's like to be married to a religious whore. And that is because he was addressing Yisrael at a time that Yahweh wanted to divorce his people for religious infidelity. And so from that point alone, it is astoundingly important that God announced his divorce of Israel by communicating through a prophet that he had asked to marry a religious prostitute so that they would get the message that the reason he was divorcing them is because of their propensity to be religious. They were cheating on him with false gods. Now, the second thing that is really important is it tells us why God speaks through people like Hosea as opposed to directly to Israel or to the rest of the world. And that is that by communicating through people, he can flavor his message such that it resonates with us, conveying human emotions. It doesn't go beyond human intellect so that we can still grasp what he is saying. It is filtered through the human experience. Now, of course, one of the reasons he spoke through people is because the chosen people chose for God not to communicate through them anymore. They told him to shut up and go away. They never wanted to hear from him or see him again, and they said that early in the Exodus. So God was relegated, if you will, to communicating through his prophets to his people and to the rest of the world. But this tells you that not only does God speak through people for the reasons I have just mentioned, to convey a human element, not to make certain that the message isn't so cerebral that it goes above everyone's head, and so that it is literally filtered through human emotions and experiences so that it resonates with us. And because he wants empathy, he wants his prophet to be able to convey the same feelings that he has for his people. It's going to be a much more effective message if it resonates both cerebrally and emotionally. But most important of all, Yahweh chose men who are not just willing to do as God asked. I mean, God asked him to go marry a temple prostitute. I mean, that's going to put him in a really odd position relative to his kin in Yisrael, right? He's going to get lots of flack for that. But he did it. But he also wants to speak through people who have experienced and learned the negative consequence of the things he's rebuking. Now you go back to Noach. He had been among the Nephilim, the fallen outside of the garden, and he rejected them, and he and his family stood apart. You look at Moshe, he was raised in the Pharaoh's house in Mitzrayim in Egypt, but he walked away, went off to the desert to tend sheep as opposed to be in the midst of all of that. So he had a keen understanding of what God was rejecting religiously and politically, economically, militarily, because he had experienced it and rejected it. You know, you look at Abraham before him. Abraham grew up in Babel, in Ur of the Chaldeans, Suma, the most religious and political place on earth at the time. And he walked away from it. He was already out of town, but he would have known why God was anti-religious. So this is something, that's really common with God, and it tells us a lot about his choice and who he communicates through and why he chooses them and how he works with them. So God inspired Hosea to write the words on a scroll which would draw his people's attention to their shepherd, who just so happened to be his beloved son. These words are as relevant to our time as, well, they are to any time, aren't as relevant as any that we have considered. So while Yah's announcement in this regard is found in the 3rd chapter of Hosea, there's a wealth of knowledge that can be gleaned along the way, as is always the case. Prophecy doesn't always stop at simply proving that God inspired these texts, because only he can be right prophetically about the past, the present, and the future 100% of the time, because he's not predicting anything. He's witnessed our future and is reporting back in time what he has seen. But it also sets up an ideal situation to educate us, and such is the case here. So let's pick up the story at the beginning. To show the way to the benefits of the relationship, this is from Asher, the word, Debar, of Yahweh, which is an accurate transliteration of the name of our Eloah, God, as guided by his Torah instructions regarding his Haya existence and our Shalom reconciliation, came to exist with Hosea, the son of Bari. Bari means within the well, a compound of ba, with or in, and well or spring. In the days of Uz-Yah, Yah prevails and Yah strengthens. It's a compound of Oz. You've heard of the Wizard of Oz? Well, that's where they got the word Oz, and which means to empower, to be powerful, to enable, and Yah, a familiar form of Yahweh's name. Yotham. Yotham is Yahweh completely finishes the job. He completes what needs to be done. It is a compound of Yah and Tamam, to complete and to finish. Akaz, which means he grasps hold, he seizes. And Yaketz Yah, it's Hezekiah, your Yah repairs and he strengthens. It's a compound of Chazak, to strengthen, to repair, and Yahweh's name. They were all kings, this says, of Yehudah, the beloved. It is a compound of Yahweh's name and Dod's name, Yahudah, Yahud. And in the days of Yeroboam, which is a quarrelsome family, contentious people, a compound of rib, to complain, to dispute, to argue, and to use words contentiously. And people, family, and nation, who was the son of Joash, Yah's fire, a form of Yahuash, a compound of Yahweh, and Ish, fire, who was king of Yisrael at the time, and that can either mean individuals who engage and endure with God, or those who contend with the Almighty. That is Hosea, he saves, Hosea 1:1. So, by closely examining what this prophet initially scribed on his scroll, we can surmise a number of relevant insights. First, God conveyed his will for his people by choosing a man whose name, Hosea, means he liberates and provides freedom. He rescues and he delivers from harm's way. He saves. Second, God does so through Debar, through words. Words are the most powerful implements in the universe. Selecting those which Asher revealed the correct path, Asher to walk to receive the benefits of the relationship. This not only affirms that the prime objective of these prophetic declarations is to reaffirm and reestablish the covenant relationship in the most appropriate and beneficial manner, but also that the path to heaven is paved, described, and guided with words. It is through words that we come to know Yahweh, and through words that we find our way to him. Third, God accomplishes all of this in concert with his name, Yahweh. We have therefore been given the opportunity to read and recite, to observe and contemplate the very word, the Debar of Yahweh. As Haya, it came to exist with Hosea. He saves. Well, that should be more than enough to garner our undivided attention. It is the reason, and it is reason enough, to translate these words as accurately and completely as is possible, while striving to deduce their implications as correctly as is achievable. The more we come to know and understand, as a result of this process of this intent, the better it is for us and for those who will grow as a result of what we have and continue to learn. Now, for example, in this pronouncement, Yahweh is introduced similarly to the way God introduced himself to Moshe and the children of Israel, using both Asher and Haya in conjunction with one another. It was Ehaya, Asher, Ehaya. Yeah, I am whom, for the benefit of the relationship, I am. So when Moshe spoke to the voice pleading with him, the very God who was asking the aging shepherd to go with him to liberate his people, he said, now they may ask of me. This is what Moshe said to Yahweh. What is his name? And what shall I reply to them? Yahweh initially answered Haya, or Ehaya, first person, Asher, Ehaya, revealing the proper pronunciation and the actual meaning of his name, even the purpose of his name. He followed this profoundly important revelation with, therefore, you should say to the children of Yisrael, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yishak, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. And this is my way of being known and remembered for all generations. That was Shemot, names, Exodus 3:15. We've covered that passage many times in the Yahweh blog. Now, this connection between the two declarations, one circa 1450 BCE and the other 750 BCE, well, it becomes especially relevant today, I think, particularly in the context of this prophetic book, wherein Yahweh is once again leading his people back home. There are lots of ethnicities, but only one was chosen. There are lots of gods, but only one is real. Recognizing and acknowledging his name is therefore an essential first step in the right direction. Now, the fourth lesson is that this would not be but I, Hosea say, as was the case with Shaul, Paul, or other rabbis when they constantly wrote, "But I, Paul, say." When communicating through his prophets, Yahweh quite often speaks for himself in first person. These unfiltered revelations place those of us who study God's statements in a similar position to the prophets themselves, and that there is literally nothing that is unavailable to us that was made known to them. This puts the observant in a tremendously enlightening and empowering position. It is as if we were there, listening to Yahweh ourselves as he spoke through He Saves. This opportunity is clearly one which was intended to benefit us even today, and therefore one we'd be wise to consistently capitalize upon. Now, the fifth insight is that the statements Yahweh has conveyed and the men like Hosea recorded for our benefit are universally true throughout time. And yet, for context and credibility, every word was grounded in the place, people, and period where it was revealed, with very few exceptions. This was in Yisrael, among Yehudim, and during the 1,000 years between Moshe's revelations in 1447 BCE and the last of the prophets, Malachi, in 447, exactly 1,000 years later, BCE. In so doing, we are exposed to the reality that prophecy isn't just about predicting the future, but also about revealing our past so that we might know how we got to this place in time. As a result, everything we need to know in the past, the present, or the future to approach Yahweh and engage in a relationship with Him was communicated, along with the means to validate the veracity of the testimony by imbuing prophetic statements with instructional concepts. Ironically, it was all conveyed on behalf and through one ethnicity. And this ethnicity is despised by those who claim its words and who protest that this prophecy serves as the basis of their faith. And yet, if it were not for Yisrael and Yehudah, everything that is known about God would have been unknown to Gentiles. Yehudim were not only the recipients of God's lone witness, but Jews have also been the most meticulously reliable scribes in human history, thereby preserving what their forefathers heard for our benefit. Now, I don't know if you know, but if you compare the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Masoretic text, Dead Sea Scrolls, they range from about mid 4th century BCE, around 350 BCE through around 50-ish CE. And the Masoretic text, the oldest extant and complete rendition of it, dates to the 12th century, the 1100s CE. So there's about a 1,300-year gap, 1,300-year gap between them. And yet the fidelity between them through Jewish scribes, the diligence of Jewish scribes, is they are consistent to 13 of 14 words. Every 14th word, there's a variation, sometimes significant, sometimes minor, often just in things like a conjunction or masculine or feminine on a noun, or first person, second or third person, similar, simple things, stems, moods, conjugations, sometimes significantly different, as is often the case in Yashaya, but they're in the range of about 93% consistent over that chasm of some 13 centuries. Now, if we compare that to the Christian New Testament, where there are 69 first, second, and third, actually second, third, and early fourth century manuscripts that have been unearthed. And we compare those to the Textus Receptus, or the current Nestle Allen 27th edition, accumulated text, if you will. The number of differences is about 300,000, and a text of some 250,000 words. In other words, with Goyim, religious Goyim, Gentiles, rather than fidelity and accurate recording the text, it's almost as if they were trying to make variations of it to who knows what, to impose the religion, to make everything seem more religious. And so there is literally no fidelity versus almost total fidelity between the cultures as it relates to accurately memorializing texts. I don't know if Christians are aware of that, but there really is no correlation between the oldest manuscripts and the Textus Receptus. They differ literally in hundreds of thousands of ways. It's to claim that a Christian is reading the inerrant Word of God in an English translation is so ludicrous that not only are the Greek words that serve as its basis, not only do they differ radically over what is just really a 200-year period. I mean, it would be the earliest texts, most of them date to the mid second, early third century. And by the mid to late fourth century, they were all over the place. And so we're dealing with 150 years and catastrophic inconsistencies. So it's a lesson worth knowing. If not for Yahweh's enduring love for his people and the plan of salvation that he established for them, humanity would be eternally estranged from our Creator, and this was communicated only through one people, Yisrael. Therefore, rationally speaking, ought not Yehudim be appreciated and even revered and respected instead of abused and scorned, because they're the ones who brought us this text? I mean, the basis of the Quran's religiosity is pilfered citations from the Talmud that are arguments on the Torah. The fact of the matter is that Christianity is based on misappropriating and misquoting the Torah and prophets. Judaism is rabbinical arguments pursuant to the Torah and prophets. They're all based on this text, and you can't ascribe it to anyone else other than Jews. So how is it that the religious believe that it is appropriate to hate and annihilate those God loves most of all? Hosea reports, right from the beginning, Yahweh spoke, communicating through Hosea. And Yahweh said to Hosea, choose of your own volition to walk under the auspices of free will, to take for yourself a woman who feigns love for money like a prostitute. Impregnate her so that she conceives and bears children who are as disloyal as whores, pandering themselves out like harlots. This is because those of the land are unfaithful prostitutes, separated away from Yahweh. As a result, and as it will be so, even in the end. That's Hosea 1:1 and 1:2. I told you it was right from the beginning. Marry yourself a religious whore, because, well, the land is filled, that would be the land of Israel, is filled with religious whores. Says it clearly. And he says that will continue to be the case right to the end. So, I mean, how could you be a rabbi? How could you be an Orthodox Jew? How can you be Haredim? And know that this is written in the book of Hosea, among the prophets, where God says you're a religious whore and you continue to be religious. Telling you something, that the religious have no excuse. It's all spelled out that God hates religion. I don't care if you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, or you're been hoodwinked by Judaism. From God's perspective, it is spiritual adultery. It's cheating on him. It's, well, he would say, goddamn religion. It's revolting. All of them. So, as we have already mentioned, this is an extraordinary request, unmatched in the annals of divine revelation. God asked his prophet to experience exactly what he was enduring from his people, the way he saw Israelites, so that he might have empathy for his plight and thus speak more effectively to Israel and Yehudah. In a symbolic sense, Yahweh's chosen people, Yehudim, were his bride, and they had become unfaithful, committing repugnant acts as religious whores. And worse, they were giving birth to a long succession of religious prostitutes. That was the message. And God said, it ain't going to change. Right to the very end, they're going to continue to do that. That's what a car means. Yahweh wanted everyone to witness this paradigm, to see it for what it was, as an example of what religion does to destroy the relationship that God intended. Through this metaphor of an unfaithful marriage, Yahweh was able to demonstrate why he had to divorce Israel. And he did so in writing in this book of Hosea. And he said, I'm leaving you and I'm not going to return until you return to me. And they haven't returned. Now, in addition, by creating a scenario where Hosea would come to disdain all that was wrong with the religious behavior of his people, Yahweh taught us another very important lesson. God chooses to communicate through people who have had some experience with what he's opposing. I shared that with you earlier. This is true with Abraham, isn't it? It's true with Noah. It's true with Moshe in the extreme. It is certainly true with me. This realization is paramount to understanding why Yahweh chose Moshe, why he communicated and introduced himself prior to that to Abraham, why he was comfortable working with Noah, and why he is asking now Hosea to endure a whorish wife. So as not to get too far astray from the upcoming prophetic pronouncement regarding Dod, and in recognition that there is already a comprehensive review of everything Yahweh conveyed to us through Hosea and a different volume. It's the 8th volume, I believe, of the Yada Yahweh series, maybe the 7th. It's called Azab, Separation. I think it's probably the 7th now. It's everything that we can deduce intelligently, at least at the time, from the book of Hosea, because I think the 8th now is Shana years, and we know that the 9th is time of trouble. And so it's all there. Well, get comfortable, please, Wookie. I don't want to keep you up or anything. It's all there to... I must be a very stimulating speaker. All that, I have a very soothing voice. I don't know which one it is, Rich.
It's both.
You think so? Okay. Thanks, Rich.
You have a way with animals.
I do. They are always comfortable around me, aren't
Yes,
they?
they are.
I have one right now. Asher's asleep on my foot, and right, Asher, and Wookie is asleep on my hand. Oh well, Cara would be here too if she wasn't with Leah at the moment. Um, I wonder if that's part of the whole process. You know, God makes certain things occur in your life so that you have um, an empathy towards them, and clearly his people are not being very thoughtful. They're acting as if they don't have an Asalma. And maybe if you can relate to and speak to those who are not thinking, and they're willing to listen to you, be comfortable in your presence, then you have a shot with people today. Maybe that's it. Um, maybe it's just to show us that we humans have really mucked it up. Now, if you compare most humans to dogs, for example, dogs behave better, and so it's a good way for us just to get a proper perspective on how far we have fallen. So the text reads, however, at this time, right now, I am revealing that which is associated with their stupidity and their foolish lewdness and shame. It's, I was trying to make a point. God beat me to it by 2,800 years. So teach me to try to go off script, huh?
It was just waiting there, right? For you.
Yeah, it was waiting right there for us to read it. So at this time, right now, I am revealing that which is associated with their stupidity and her foolish lewdness and shame, her senselessness and disgraceful conduct. It's from Nabal. It means to be ignorant and irrational. In sight of her most intimate lovers and her passionate desires, in view of those with whom she has formed a close personal relationship, romantic, sexual, or emotional. And no individual can save her out of my hand. In other words, she's been a whore so long that God says, I'm not here to save the religious. And that's really important. Ultimately, we're here to inspire and to purge and to preserve a mortal remnant of Yisrael. Also here to cultivate the Shabua harvest and the Teruah gleaning. But in that process, God has made it clear a long, long time ago that our mission is to appeal to those who are not overtly religious or political, those who are not conspiratorial or anti-Semitic. We'd be wasting our breath with them. God can't reason with them. They're so disturbed, so ultimately corrupted by their religion, their politics, their conspiracies, or their racial hatred. But you can't reach them. You can't reason with them. God himself can't reason with the religious. So God's saying, don't try to save them. Please. The religious whores, leave them alone. It's not only they can't be saved. Now, this is a shocker to some. God doesn't want them saved. God's not looking to fill out, a big resume of a batting order, if you will, for the covenant. His dance sheet is going to be really, really constrained, tiny. God is not trying to save everyone. He is not even trying to save most people. He can go as far, he's not even trying to save a significant percentage of people. I think 1 in a million is about the right number. He indicates as much in the second statement he etched in stone at the conclusion of the second statement, which says, don't be religious. If you're religious, you're going to end up corrupting your sons to the third and fourth generation. Don't do that. Don't be associated in any way with religion. Actually, the second statement. If I said third, I meant to say second. And it concludes by saying that there will be thousands who will ultimately benefit from God's mercy by closely examining, carefully considering the terms and conditions of his covenant agreement. And when you do, you realize that thousands amongst billions, well, it's 1 in a million. That's the number. It's, 1 in 10 would be 10%. 1 in 100 would be 1%. 1 in 1,000 would be 1/10 of 1%. No, he's talking about 1 in 1,000,000. And I don't know if the odds are going to be that good, quite frankly. So God is on record. Don't try to save the overtly political. MAGAs cannot be saved. Marxists can't be saved. Muslims, Christians, the Haredim are beyond salvation. They will never know God. They'll never be allowed into his presence. But the same thing is true with the overtly political, the conspiratorial, and the anti-Semitic. Don't bother. You are never going to save them. Now, since we cannot be wrong when we follow Yahweh's example, we are right to expose humankind's religious stupidity and their political foolishness. Man's beliefs in this regard are shameful and cannot be rationally or morally respected. God wants religion and politics condemned, and he is not interested in saving those who fall prey to them. And he is on record saying he's going to condemn, which means it's stripped to Sheol, for those who have been overtly opposed to what he is trying to offer. According to God, the religious have lost the capacity to understand. Their faith literally precludes it. They are immune to evidence and reason, which is why the truth only resonates with those who have begun to question their societal introduction. And I'm here to tell you that I've experienced people that I had a long history with, that I have written so many books that they've read, and we've engaged in thoughtful discussions on them, and they've gone berserk. And fortunately so, because again, God knows that he has to be very careful who he makes immortal and empowers from 3 to 7 dimensions, because as a 7-dimensional being, you can speak any change into the universe and it will happen. And you could really muck stuff up. That was a muck with an M. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't listen to God and you aren't responsive and reliable, God can't afford to allow you to destroy everything for everyone else. So there has to be a way of saying, okay, you were exposed to the truth, but you rejected it. Goodbye. You chose to be conspiratorial or religious or just genuinely stupid. I don't know. Any one of those things. But if you really want to get down to the brass knuckles on this, God says you can't fix stupid. One of the lines that I've used for a very long time. You can't fix stupid. So there is no way for man to save humankind, or even God to do so, nor is there a desire to do so. Left to our own devices, we are the problem, not the cure. And the more of us there are, the worse we become. Now, there are 2 ways to interpret what we have just read and what follows, both of which are, I think, appropriate. First, Yahweh is going to hold Yisrael and Yehuda accountable for their ignorant and irrational perceptions of him, especially as a result of their false gods, Hashem, for example, and errant attributes that they have foolishly conceived. And second, he isn't letting them off. He isn't letting go of them. He is going to spare some of them once they regain their desire to know him. So he's not going to let all of them run away. But that will require a willingness to distance themselves from that which Yahweh views as inappropriate before he will quell our acts to quell their ongoing influence. So, it's as God says, and he says it often in the book of Hosea, shub for shub. If you want God to return to you, you need first to return to him. He was here, you pushed him away. Wasn't the other way around. Then I will observe the Shabbat, he says, by causing a cessation of all of her merry celebrations, her festival feasts, her new moon observances, her approach to the Shabbat, and all of her designated celebrations. Hosea, he liberates Hosea 2:11. This is very much alike something that we read also in the early chapters of Yeshaya, Isaiah, where God says, I've just had my fill. I don't want any more of. I can barely stomach all of your sacrifices and all of your festival feasts. They're repulsive. And God is saying here that the religious festivals and feasts of the Jews are anathema to him. He despises them. They mess up all of them. There's 7 times a year we're supposed to meet with Yahweh, and they turn Passover into a 7-day event and misconstrue its purpose, completely missing the point when Passover is simply the first day of Chag Matzah, and they completely miss the point of Chag Matzah, don't even celebrate it as matzah. They don't celebrate Bikurim. They don't celebrate Shabuah. They have replaced Teruah with Rosh Hashanah. They have upended Kippurim so that it is the antithesis of what it was intended to be. And they run around with some sour fruit and 3 other species and erect these temporary huts as if they understood Sukkah when they're clueless as to what it means. And so God's saying, you missed all of it. You've screwed it all up. Stop it already. I'm really disgusted by you. And of course, they've turned the Shabbat into do nothing day, as opposed to celebrate their relationship day. Everything. And I hear rabbis always talking about their new moon celebrations. They've got a celebration for each new month, and they go on and on about it when God says, don't do that stupid stuff. Of course, Shabbat is unique among Hebrew words. While most nouns are defined by their verbal root, the 7th day is a special case, and that is because the title itself is actionable. Rather than a day to do nothing, or in the case of Judaism, instead of being the most onerous religious day of the week, Yahweh wants this time set apart to enjoy our relationship with him. It's actionable. Therefore, upon Yahweh's return, he will be Shabbating by celebrating the 7th day, beginning on the Shabbat of Sukkah. This is Friday at sunset, October 7th, 2033. By eliminating all traces of Judaism 15 days prior to that, as well as Christianity and Islam and Marxism and conspiracy and anti-Semitism, et al., et al., et al. All of the religious and religions, extraneous celebrations, including the perverted ways of the Hasidic, the way that they have completely destroyed the meaning of the Moedim, will end. Yom Kippurim will never again be a day of atonement, a time to degrade and afflict oneself or twirl chickens above your head. A day to torment chickens. Who in the hell came up with that? Or a day to buy a $5,000 unedible, ugly piece of fruit on Sukkah. And never again is any of this going to happen. Chickens are not going to be tortured by perverted Jews. The rules rabbis have imposed to make the Shabbat so burdensome and laborious will be eliminated so that the covenant's children can flourish and celebrate our relationship with our Father. But let there be no mistake. Yahweh is not eliminating any part of his plans for his people. His Shabbat, Chag, and Moedim will be observed and celebrated forevermore. It's only her corruptions that are being rebuked and removed. In other words, Yahweh's 7 Moedim are being reinstalled just as they were intended to be celebrated, as they are presented in volumes 4, 5, and 6 of the Yada Yahweh series. If other approaches were acceptable, then there would have been no reason to say otherwise or have his son suffer the indignity of fulfilling Pesach and Matzah and Since this audience, Jews, remain unchanged in this regard, as God foretold in this prophecy, Israel and Yahudah are being specifically renounced, and God is condemning Judaism's corruption of the Moedim, as well as the way they observe the Shabbat. God's not impressed. He's frustrated with a lot of you. Now, Yahweh isn't going to forget and forgive those guilty of advancing the Lord's agenda. There will be a consequence, I should say, of plain religious dress up, of burning incense and making sacrifices to false gods, as well as for beguiling others into doing the same by gilding their lies such that their deceptions somehow appear credible. So God says, I will take an accounting of her days in association with the Balaam, because she blew smoke, burned incense, and made offerings to them. Then she was adorned, plain religious dress up, with her ornamental rings and her circular object, like a kippah, a yarmulke. It's a nice round object, isn't it? You get the connection? Bejeweled, she went after her lovers, pursuing her desires and her illicit relationships. And she ignored and forgot me. She's speaking to Israel, not a prostitute. He is one and the same, I guess, aren't they? He's speaking to Jews. He's speaking to Israel. She ignored and forgot me. And she has not recovered from that stupor, prophetically announces Yahweh. That's He Saves, Hosea 2:13. So make no mistake. The gods of religion are Balaam, their lords. The Lord God is Satan, achieving what he most desires, which is to be seen as, well, above the Most High. The consequence of building synagogues, churches, mosques, temples, and shrines, of plain religious dress-up, of celebrating pagan holidays, is that they cause us to overlook God. Do any one of these things long enough, get enough people to do the same, in time, Yahweh will be forgotten. This is exactly what occurred from the time when Dowd first testified to us and first unified Yisrael unto today. So this shouldn't be a surprise, because Yahweh told us it would happen exactly in this way. Free will, of course, precluded the Almighty from prohibiting his people's poor choices or their propensity to entice the gullible with all manner of religious myths, creating the myth even of Christianity and promulgating the myths of Islam by selling Muhammad the Talmud stories that made the Quran appear religious. God's frustration with the religiosity of his people is palpable. It is the most prevalent and repeated theme throughout the Torah, as well as the prophets. This statement is no exception. Yahweh is exposing and he is condemning Yisrael's attraction to and even worship of false gods. Yahweh is disgusted by what the rabbis have done and what Judaism is still doing to denigrate and estrange the chosen people from him. Fortunately, however, free will works both ways. Yahweh has it too. And the time has come for him to express his intent, which is to speak to the children of Israel once again, to take them to this place where every nuance of his word is considered again, such that he can rely on the most rational and receptive of Israelites and of Yahudah, ultimately exercising good judgment so as to return to him. Therefore, and by contrast, long thereafter, behold, Knowing that she has been deceived, I will leave the way wide open to persuade her so that she might become open-minded again. At that moment, I will walk with her to ponder the word, even in the place where these statements are questioned, such that I speak words to her heart, making an impression on her judgment and thinking. That's Hosea 2:14. It's a prophetic announcement. It opens with a generous offer. A way is being left wide open for reconciliation and has been for a very long time, right to this day. Yahweh is even committing to walk beside Israel through it all. So, after exposing and condemning the corrupting and controlling aspects of the religion of his people, God is providing his alternative. We've been offered access to the truth and to freedom, such that we can choose the better alternative. Long after Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have seduced and deceived the gullible, Yahweh is opening a door for the open-minded. He tells us, however, that they will be few and far between. For most, the only approach to life, the only thing they know is to be either religious, political, patriotic, or conspiratorial. That would incorporate 99% of people on the planet. Their worldview is universally deceitful, destructive, deadly, and damning. It's a shame. But for the few that are not religious, they are typically political. And those who are not religious or political are almost always conspiratorial. And even those that wouldn't be caught up in those three quite often are patriotic. They're all excluded. For all of these many years, Yahweh has allowed his creation, and most notably Yahudah, which is feminine, while Yisrael is masculine, interesting, to walk away from him, to disavow him, to slander and mock him, and even completely disregard their creator. Not interfering with our choices has been essential to the primary purpose of our existence, so that we could choose of our own volition to engage in the relationship and therefore endure with God, rather than to struggle against him, as is emblazoned in the very name Yisrael. That's why Satan was allowed to slither into Eden to make minor embellishments on God's testimony, because, well, Chawa was already chomping at the bit to be a goddess, don't you know? So there is more to Middabar. Middabar, interesting word. Hebrew word for word is dabar. Me in Hebrew means to ponder the implications of something. Me, my, is to question it. So Middabar would be a place that the word is either pondered or questioned. It's a double-edged sword, cutting away and setting apart, is it not? We are free to ponder the who, what, why, and when, even how of every word Yahweh selected and inspired to teach and guide us, such that we come to know him, appreciate what he's offering, and of course understand what he expects in return. Or we can deny his existence. We can question his veracity and reliability, calling his every word into question, as is the case with religious intent. So once Yisrael and Yahudah come to their senses and start thinking rationally, Yahweh will do as he has promised. Beginning then and there, I'm prepared to give to her so that she can approach her vineyards and her vine dresser, her garden, and the resulting fruit. The valley of Achor troubles will become the open doorway of hope, of being confident and expecting a good and beneficial future. Then and there, along with the name, she will respond with the answer. In the days of her youth and in the day when lifted up, she attended and ascended out of the land of the crucibles of political oppression. Hosea, he protects Hosea 2:15. I assume we're coming up on an hour mark, so I will conclude this with this thought. That God is prophetically speaking of a time where he is allowing his people to approach him again. And that this time is going to occur on Teruah in advance of Kippurim and Sukkah in year 6000 Yah 2033. And that he has an elaborate system already in place for this to occur. And that the vineyards and the vine dresser, the vineyard belongs to Dod in Jerusalem. He is the vine dresser. And her garden, which is what God is promising to do with the earth, returning it to the nature of the Garden of Eden. And the resulting fruit is the result of the final Zeroah, the one cultivating the harvest. The valley of Achor troubles that leads to the open doorway is God's way of saying that no matter how bad things got for you or how good they were ever so briefly, over the past 3,400 years, you consistently turned away from me, preferring to be religious than engage in the relationship. I opened the door for you and you closed it. I opened it again, you closed it. And so the only way that that door is going to be open for you up here so that you can recognize it and choose to walk through it is for you to go through a time of troubles, a valley, a deep depression, and have endured this cunning plot that is going to be so troubling to you. It's why the next 7 years is going to be disastrous. And it's only when your backs are against the wall, God says, and there's nowhere else, there's no other exit, no other door, not the IDF, not your political parties, not your rabbis, not nobody, not nowhere, not know how, then only then will that doorway be one of hope, of expectation, of a more beneficial future. And so if you have grasped hold of Yahweh's name at that time, and you know the right answer, because, well, you have responded to him at long last, Anna. Even in the days of your youth, because at that moment on Teruah, they're all going to be babes. Not chronologically so much, but in terms of their understanding of God, they will have come to know his name. They will have responded to the invitation, and they will be a clean slate. Other than that, they will be nursing infants that we need to raise and equip and educate and nourish and teach and guide and serve as exemplars for the next 1,000 years so that they too can become covenant. But right now, the mortal remnant of Yisrael has the spiritual IQ of a 1-month-old. Maybe more correctly, a 1-day-old. So, nevertheless, this will be the day that she will be lifted up, that she will ascend. And it will be at this day that it will be the equivalent as when she was liberated from the religious and political constraints, oppression of Mitzrayim. And once again, this mortal remnant will be those who have been freed from religion and from politics, all to gather around the Temple Mount listening to Elia as the master of ceremonies, witnessing the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, witness God removing all traces of religious and political hostility, transforming the earth to the conditions that we find in Eden, and restoring this remnant by purging their guilt so that 10 days later they can witness the great homecoming of Father and Son, Yahweh and Dod, our God and our Savior. And then we will enter the 1,000-year opportunity that Sukkah represents. That is the story that is being foretold and explained in these words. And as I say, we have come to the conclusion of Hosea. He protects 2:15. So I thank you for listening. We'll be with you this evening, 6 o'clock East Coast time this evening, as we will continue our analysis of luminaries as part of Family Hour. So I hope you'll join us then. Until then, good day.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.